Hello, hello. Oh, there we go. Right on, Momentum Murray. Thanks for joining. Thank you for giving me the heads up before I got too far. Jeez, I was cooking too. I don't know what happened, but it started working for some reason. So anyway, all right. Well, let's start all over. What's up, everybody? My name is Alex, and welcome to The Broth, the most fun, serious show on the internet. We are here live in the cauldron. And today we're going to talk about a few things, including the Trump New World Order, the new monetary system that's coming. And yeah, we're going to dig into that. I'm going to talk about Blue Origin, start off their little journey up into the upper levels of the atmosphere. They did not go to space. You cannot go to space, but even if you could, they didn't. And we're going to talk about Real ID a little bit. The libertarians are losing their minds about ID. And what else? Yeah, I got a few things, and I'm excited. It was nice to have a few days off, and I'm excited for a weekly show. I just have more to talk about. I'm not going to have to stretch something into longer than what it really deserves, and had a little more time to prepare, so that's nice. And yeah, pretty excited about today's show. I learned a lot about, I've been doing a lot of research on global trade and monetary stuff, and learned a lot. And yeah, I think they're playing it close to their chest, but before they got to the point where it was like strategic to keep it hush, Trump's advisors were talking about ideas, and Trump has talked about ideas before too. And a lot of it is going to hinge on stablecoins, and it really solves some problems, and it's pretty exciting. So we're going to get into that. Yeah, I didn't throw this cartoon on for any particular reason. Just thought it would be fun to have something else in the background than copyright-free music all the time. Is it racist? I don't know. Am I? I mean, I think I probably have. I don't know. If people look at my Twitter, I'm not colorblind. I'm not like a colorblind meritocracy guy, and maybe it would put some people off. Maybe some people in the like in the Little Season community or whatever. But I was coming from a place of talking about politics and religion, and I just talk about everything. And my whole life I've been kind of taught to be ashamed of being white, be ashamed of being German to an extent. I think I'm half Jewish. In many ways, they're a protected class, but also like people are just mean about everything and everybody. But as a white person, I was always like taught you have to be ashamed of of bad things that happened in the past and take responsibility for them, but you're not allowed to take responsibility for all the good things. And they didn't really teach us about many of the good things. They taught us much more about the bad things. And what that's cultivated, they didn't just do that with me, they did that with the whole country. And that's cultivated like a hatred of white people. And we need to push back. And I think part of pushing back means just being like unabashedly proud of who we are. But also sometimes it means like fighting back against people. When people tell you that when people tell me like white people never invented anything and they stole everything, but the reality is they've invented like 96% of everything in the world. Like, I don't think it's not wrong to push back on that and get real a little bit. So that's my position on that. I love everybody. I don't think anyone's inferior to anyone else. Our value comes from, just wanted to address this. Our value comes from God. And if one group we all have different strengths and weaknesses as groups are real. And God doesn't like some of us less or value some of us less based on that. But like, I think we just have to get real about some of this stuff. So I don't think anyone's superior or inferior. Um, that like God created us equal, but also like I really value a lot of things that white people create, particularly society. And I'm not going to pretend like I don't. So, nobody cares if white people are offended, and you keep doing that, they're going to stop caring if you're offended. So I think we can all have a conversation, a uh, adult conversation about this stuff, and probably be helpful for our society. It might be a good idea. It might be a good idea to get real a little bit. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Let's talk about Blue Origin for a little bit. The ladies went to space. First full female crew of a space dong. They didn't pilot the dong. They didn't really do anything but sit there. It was kind of analogous to when we sent a monkey into space years ago. Not in, I'm not saying women are monkeys, but that they didn't do anything. And there have been women astronauts before, and this whole thing is basically a PR stunt. And of course, they can't go to space because outer space is not a thing. It doesn't exist. We live in an enclosed system with a firmament above us. But the firmament's pretty high, so you can get pretty high up there. But I would just like to present this to you and suggest that if you don't see that this is a psyop, you're probably not going to make it. And it is the highest top. And it is. By the way, my headphones aren't. None. I have 3 pairs of headphones. None of them are working right now. So if there's a little echo, I apologize. It shouldn't be too bad though. Surrender to the unknown, trust,
and this whole journey is not just about going to space. It's the training, it's the team, it's the whole thing. I couldn't recommend this experience more. This is like up there with all the, different tools that I've learned in my life, from meditation to the Hoffman process. This is up there because what you're doing is you're like really finding the love for yourself, because you got to trust in yourself on this journey. And then you're feeling the love when you come down, for sure. And you're feeling that strength. So I feel really connected to that strong, divine feminine right now.
By the way, you're such a badass. I love that the month of April, you're like, I'm going to space and I'm launching my tour.
It is.
Yeah, anything this woman is involved in is like a satanic op. That what is she even talking about? Like, this is the new religion now, is meditation and whatever process you just said, and going to space. If you really want to like feel the self-love, because loving yourself, you have to love yourself, and you have to go to space. Yeah. So we'll watch a little footage. Here's inside the spaceship. Nice shot there. Here's a lot of people are like, not to burst anyone's bubble, but Sunita Williams set records on her 3 flights to the International Space Station and was stranded in space by the last administration. The cosplay women today that did something for 10 minutes was not impressive. Okay, I mean, sure, but this isn't real.
Long, so, don't make all those plans without me.
That is not.
We'll be back before too long. I can tell you at the outset, all of us have the.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm kissing the ground. How long were they gone? They were gone for like 10 minutes. You can't get anywhere in 10 minutes. But my working assumption is that they went up in the sky, but then they came back down. Here is Sally Ride. Now, if space was real, then she would be a lot more legitimate. And she's an OG space faker. Pre-Mother's Day psyop, well, the outsourced mother. Here are the rims on the Blue Origin capsule. We've captured that. Here's the monkey, who is a real pioneer and real hero here. Somebody pointed this out. here's the logo, and then they flipped it upside down, and it's literally Baphomet's head, like obviously. So, it always it always is. I wonder if she had an eyeball malfunction. Have we all seen the eyeball malfunction of Katy Perry? Let's bring that up real quick, because we really can't mention Katy Perry without showing this. Because I don't know what this is, and I don't know what she is, but there's something wrong with her. What's going on here? Why did she, what? Who, what are you? What are you, lady? Is that weird or what? Get some sound. What is this? What is she wearing? Like, I can't even do that. I don't know what's going on with that. Yeah, penis jokes. This woman's disgusted that they spent the money. Listen, Emily Ratajkowski, money is fake. You can print money and do anything. Yes, brassiere jokes. Here's apparently coming down.
Just free falling right there until those drugs came out. And then next will be the main parachutes that get pulled out. That screaming inside the capsule. And all three air cushion that will kick up the dust. It's a very
That part looks fun.
soft landing despite the sporty.
I mean, it looks like a fun ride. Okay, we'll get some more footage here. Another guy mad about the waste of money. I'm pretty sure Bezos self-funded this, so I don't really understand that angle. It's like no, you're supposed to give me your money. Okay. Where's Sally Ride? Okay, tripping and falling, I guess. Here they are coming back. They're ringing a bell. This lady seems over it, I guess.
Each crew names themselves. They have named themselves the six, taking up space as each one is ringing a bell. And the significance of that is what, Ariana? This is one of our traditions. All astronauts throughout history in various programs have had their traditions. For us, we always want our astronauts to ring the bell. And here they come. Here we go. Loading into the capsule.
Okay. Sure, there's some occultic significance there. Okay, so here they are, weightless and limitless.
Got it? 1, 2, 3, take up space!
Something's in a bob. So this is, if they're that high up, this is not space. And if they're not feeling gravity, my understanding is it just slow, they're at the parabolic curve of it where you don't feel the gravity. And It's freaking.
Flynn, I got you. I got you, Flynn.
Gotcha. Proud of you, Flynn.
And people, like they do every 15 minutes, are going to say checkmate flat earthers. There could be a fisheye lens going on, but also like that could be the edge of the circle, which is a curve. So I don't know. But this whole thing could have been faked as well. I do kind of like there is kind of a what is the point? I don't know. I mean, it's cool to go high in the sky, you know, even as a flat earther. Rockets are awesome, and going very high up and very fast is cool. And parabola trajectories are cool. But I kind of understand this perspective as well. I did have, here's Flat Earth Zone. So he's going to show you how the horizon stays at high level the entire time, which would be impossible on a ball and what you would expect on a plane. You're going 320,000 feet up in the air, and the horizon is rising to eye level. It'll stay basically, unless the rocket is tilting, it'll stay at this part of the screen. And also he's saying this camera doesn't have a fisheye on it, and you'll never see a curve on it. I haven't watched this, but it's a pretty good follow, Flat Earth Zone.
We revolve around the sun. The sun's in the middle, and we're spinning through space and wobbling with the sun at over 600,000 miles per hour. When an organization of pseudoscientists tell me to go completely against what all my senses tell me, that
You see how the Earth is not falling away from you? You don't have to look down at all.
we're stationary and flat. I see it's flat. It's immovable. And I'll go outside when I send a camera without GoPro or fisheye lens. When I send a balloon up 100,000 feet and it shows the horizon flat, I can't go against that. When I see skylines 60 to 100 miles away, when spherical geometry says they should be behind the curve, all this stuff isn't adding up.
You guys seeing how the horizon is at the same part of the screen as it was when we started? That is not possible on a ball. Good on him for busting this out fast. That's pretty cool. Goes against my senses, but it's happening. Hey, NASA wouldn't lie. You know, they're all Freemasons at NASA, but why would they? People get angry. Why would they lie? Hey, why would they lie? Answer that question right now. Can we talk about that? There's no curvature and that the horizon came up with it. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, it was like if you were going to be an astronaut, you had to be both the star quarterback and the valedictorian. You had to be that guy. And now this. Not to mention, this wasn't going to be a flat Earth episode. It's not going to be. Yeah, it just makes me think of that one guy who's the morons in space is not new. What's that guy's name? I guarantee you I can find this. Dumb astronaut. Elon calling him fully retarded. Well, I don't know. We'll talk about that another time when I get into some other stuff. So yeah, okay. So let's talk about the new economic plan. So here's Scott Bessent. I like him so far. Seen him in interview. Very wealthy guy, but seems like a pretty down to earth guy. In this, he explains basically the tariffs and the economy and stuff and what they're doing, not the future plans for the new global new world order, but basically what they're doing that we can know about and how it works. And this lady or fella, or I don't know what's going on here, is seems pretty impressed. So let's watch towards the end here. And this was like, we're going to kind of go in order of what I was watching and then doing research behind it.
So the businesses don't have to pass them on, or the producers in the other countries can eat the tariffs. And traditionally, the dollar adjusts. So it's a very complicated calculus to see where we end up.
Yeah, and of course, these are much broader than the ones in the first term. The president was making the argument in the Rose Garden about what economists predicted then and what this looks like now. But on what you mentioned on what the president promised on the campaign trail, whether it comes to no taxes on tips or Social Security, do you envision this in a large way helping pay for that? Because sometimes that's a criticism from critics of this White House, saying that he's just using these tariffs to pay for the extension of those tax cuts.
Well, for the extension of the tax cuts or the new no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime and auto deductibility. And look, what's wrong with that? That if we take the 10% ring around the globe tariff, that if there's a currency appreciation, if the producers eat a portion of it, and then there's a slight price adjustment, on the other side, you have all four of those things happening for working Americans. At the end of the day, we could imagine that their real after-tax purchasing power has substantially increased.
And we'll see what that looks like. But on just this overall, you're coming into this, some people say, most Americans, I feel pretty good about where the economy was.
Liberals trying to deal with Trump's tide when they're making sense is so funny, because she's like, what is he just going to use those to pay for these tax breaks? And it's like, isn't that what you people argue for all the time, but you have no plan to pay for it? Is like tax breaks for the working class. And so then they're doing it, and then they're like it's a bad thing. And then he explains it, and we'll see how that goes. All right, lady.
President Trump took office, we saw the stock market rally. Do you have any concerns that this announcement will put that in jeopardy for Americans?
Well, first of all, Caitlin, I would back up because out on the campaign trail and for the previous year, I called it the steroid economy. It looks great on the outside. You're kind of big, muscular in this, but on the inside, it's killing your internal organs. And what was happening was we were heading for a financial crisis. We were at 6.7% deficit to GDP, which we've never had.
Yeah. So anyway, he's explaining that the tariffs, like why the prices aren't going to increase for Americans. Nick Fuentes did a much better job of explaining that. Basically, the American consumers are notoriously averse to price hikes. If you raise the prices on them, they will buy less. It does not work well. And that there are many mechanisms in which you could absorb the cost of the price hike in other places. But it also puts pressure on the exporters and relieves pressure on people making stuff in America. And a lot of these companies are, international. So all they would need to do is move the production to the United States, and that they would want to do that. But this is just a surface level. Here we're talking about the tariffs. There's two notable things about why we have to go deeper. One is that, obviously, Trump isn't just instituting tariffs. He's doing something. He is he's taking them away. He's putting a pause on it. He's increasing it for somebody else over here. And he's getting a lot of criticism for that. But that is a strategy. What we are in is not the new world order. The new world order isn't Trump does whatever he wants. The point of this is he's putting pressure on basically he's showing the world the economic might of America, which has not been wielded in an intentional and intelligent way forever, since I don't know, the 60s or something. So the world needs to be reminded of the economic might, and also they need to be shown that even though we have this crazy amount of debt, even though our real economy is quite bad in a lot of ways, we've got millions and millions of people with enough money to spend money, and almost nowhere else has anything comparable to that. And we're also pretty we're consumers. We like spending our money. So that is what Trump is doing, basically, is he's shaking up the world. He's showing that we're the boss. And so then when he proposes the new plan, people are going to be listening. And he's showing, hey, we're not afraid to crash the stock market. We're not afraid of a trade war. We are not afraid of not having any trade with China, let alone the rest of you. So when we propose something that's going to be good for everybody, you guys better just, you're going to want to get on board. Now, if he didn't do that first and he just proposed this stuff, people will be like, I don't know if the party I'm in doesn't like Trump, so I don't know if I should agree with this. They're going to have all sorts of stupid reasons of why not to jump on board. So that's the first thing, is that this isn't what we're seeing isn't the new way things are. It's a strategy, and the chaos is part of the strategy. The other part is that tariffs will have a role in it in the new order, but that the new order is much bigger than tariffs. It is a new monetary policy for the world, and it's actually quite exciting. So to introduce where we're going, this is Bessent himself. He is, by the way, the Secretary of the Treasury. There's a good interview with him on Tucker Carlson's show. I'd recommend it. He strikes me as somebody who is smart, and I don't think, he's not like, he's not a screw the poor guy, and he's not a we need to uplift the poor guy. He's a America needs an economy that works well for everybody guy, and that includes having a solid working class, and he understands that. And he likes the idea of bringing manufacturing back. I think he's talked about that for quite a while. And he's talking about something else, which is the really innovative thing. So we're going to talk about why why did they let all of the industry go, and how do we get it back, and why haven't people tried to do this before? I mean, there's a lot of reasons: corruption, not giving a shit, but there's basically, people thought, and I think it was convenient to think, that you could either have the US dollar as the world reserve currency, or you could have American manufacturing, and that it was better to have the former. And it was particularly better to have the former if you were a billionaire than if you're a working person. And Bessent is one of a few people who've been saying, no, you can have both of these things, and here's the plan to do it. Now, he introduces stablecoins as, he said, so this is quite a statement: stablecoins will preserve dollar dominance. So we live in a time where, BRICS is trying to threaten dollar dominance. We've had it through the petrodollar. I'm going to go through a little bit of the history. But it's being threatened. It's not backed by gold anymore. It's basically a confidence game. It works because people trust the United States, and that is pretty dubious. And they trade oil with it. And so he's saying stablecoin. So I'll explain why that works. Here he says, as President Trump has directed, we are going to keep the U.S. the dominant reserve currency in the world, and we will use stablecoins to do that. So yeah, exciting stuff. So yeah, now I'll go through some things. Talked about tariffs as a strategy, and then so I was talking about the why they thought that you couldn't have industry here and also have the dollar be the global reserve currency. The way I understand that is, in order to make the dollar the global world currency, they had to have the U.S. trade at a deficit. So trading at a deficit means that we import more than we export, which means we're spending our money, and their money is ending up in other countries. And we need to spread the dollar around the world, and that was the strategy to do it. That was in the context of Bretton Woods. So I'll get into that. But the point is, if you make all the stuff here, if our dollar is stronger than the other dollars, then our stuff is more expensive elsewhere, and it's hard to export. And B, if we have a trade surplus, then we're not spreading dollars around the world. So, but when the way it started out was with gold-backed dollar, and it was after World War II, and it was an agreement called Bretton Woods. But that's very different than where we are today. So I'll just tell this history a little bit. So Bretton Woods was after World War II. We won. We were the only country that wasn't totally destroyed, basically, the only major country. And so we could kind of dictate terms. And so we said, all right, the US dollar is tied to gold. Every dollar represents an amount of gold. We're going to peg that. And then we will have gold reserves. So US dollar represents that much, whatever of an ounce. And then other countries would peg their currency to the dollar. And that system was great for a while. We had booming industry here. We had the 50s, and it was pretty stupendous. But then we had a few things that changed. One is the demand for the dollar kept going up outside of the country because more of the world was being integrated into this economy. So we had more demand for dollars. We only have so much gold. Second thing is we spent $1 gazillion on Vietnam. And third was, and Nixon inherited the newly created Medicare and Medicaid, which costs $1 gazillion. So all of that meant that we didn't really have enough gold for the money. And Nixon is credited with taking us off the gold standard, but he sort of my understanding is that he's the one who just made it official. They already were printing all sorts of money that they didn't have. And it was sort of like, I hope, it was like a bank run. You become scared of a bank run scenario. It's like, I hope too many people don't want their gold at once. And then at some point, France started wanting their gold, and they started being like, okay, we have, $10 billion. We would like the gold now. And so stuff like that was happening. And then there was inflation and stuff. And then Nixon said, all right, this can't work anymore. And it was really like, he gets blamed. The libertarians always blame him as if he did this unconscionable thing. I don't really see what else he could have done. The only other thing he could have done would be completely renegotiate the monetary system, which is like what Trump is about to do. And he did not have the mandate or political clout to pull that off, I don't think. So he just took it off the reserve currency, and then other currencies started decoupling their dollar to the U.S. from the U.S. dollar, and it was basically a period of chaos until good old what's his name? Good old Ronnie Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and they created they basically formalized the goldless system out of the chaos. And that is what, me and most people that I talk to, all we've known for our lives. is people call it like the neoliberal world order, basically. And so it's pure fiat money. And it is the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve was issuing the currency before, and it's not part of the government. It's like run by a cabal of bankers, like literally. But when it was gold backed, they had to do so. They had to operate within the parameters of like a physical commodity, and because the money was more real then, they didn't have that much power to affect things. So it made sense in some ways. I think it was a bad idea from the start to have it not be, it's undemocratic for it to not be under the jurisdiction of an elected leader, if you want to look at it that way. But at least they didn't really have very much power. And then they made the money fake, which I can understand how that happened. And but then that meant that the Federal Reserve, who prints the money, doesn't really have a limit on what they can print. I know it's not quite as cut and dry as that, but basically they got a lot more power from this new system because the money became fake and they were in charge of the fake money essentially. So and then we had, instead of it being gold backed, we had basically said, well, we'll stay with the reserve currency, not because it's tied to gold, but because you're only allowed to buy and sell oil using it, which we enforced with the military. So that was the system for quite a while. But the problem was, as this was going on, America's industry continued to hollow out, and the gap between the rich and the poor in America got worse and worse and worse, and the wages compared to rent gap got insane, and now we're all poor, but we have some stuff, but we can't afford a house, and there's no jobs that are real, and we don't make anything, and we're on the verge of bankruptcy. We're like trillions of dollars deficit, giant gazillion dollar debt, and it can't keep going this way. Now, my understanding is that what usually happens in this scenario is that there's a war, and then after the war, they redo the economic system because people don't like going to war. But when large groups of people who are powerful stop being able to eat, that's usually when it happens. It seems to me that the Trump administration is trying to avoid the war part and just do this, and hopefully they'll be successful. And when I say this, what I mean is do the Great Reset, but not the one that the globalists, communists, and Jewish and whatever else people wanted. So they were going for stuff like centralized digital currencies. So something that's not decentralized, digital money that's created by a federal, private bank or something, and social credit score and all that stuff, and no tariffs, free trade, right? No borders. Where nobody's fighting for jobs in their country. That just rich people get to move money around the chessboard, and we can starve or prosper depending on if we're standing in the right place, basically. But this vision is basically it's nationalism and protectionism baked into the cake, but with using some innovation to make the whole thing work a lot more smoothly and efficiently, and having some of that innovation replace the need for some of the institutions that the Western liberal world order, used to take away the sovereignty of other nations, which I'll get to in a minute. So yeah, hopefully that's all making good sense here. So yeah, okay. So neoliberal world order. petrodollar. And so then, okay, so stable coins. So if you don't know, a stable coin is a blockchain based, it's like a cryptocurrency, but it's pegged to the US dollar. And so, one USDC or USDT is worth $1. And the way that it's pegged is technical, doesn't really matter, but it'll stay that value all the time. And people have already been using it throughout the world when they live in places like Zimbabwe where there's runaway inflation. If you've got $1,000 in the bank, but it's in Zimbabwe dollars, and tomorrow it's worth half as much, and the next day it's worth half as much, and the next day it's worth half as much, you just put $1,000 in, or you have 10 million, whatever it is. You buy USDT on the internet. You don't need a US. You don't even need a bank account. You don't need an ID. You don't need a bank account. You need a phone, and you can do it. And then it's stable. So people have been doing this, and it works great. And when Bessent says he's going to use, or they're going to use stable coins to keep the dollar the world currency, what it seems like he's talking about is they're going to formalize the ability to use stable coins in addition to US dollars globally. And this will happen. They're not going to force people to do it overnight. And so it's not going to like instantly skyrocket crypto or anything. They're going to introduce these tools. They're going to formalize the ability to use them. And then they're gonna have a whole, what they always do, they have a whole proposal, and you're either in or you're out. And if you're out, then you don't get to take advantage of none of this stuff, and you're going to lose out big. And if you're in, these are the rules. So a big part of that is that the stable coins, like anyone can use them. You can use them for global trade, and America will take them. So that's kind of the big thing. And so what that means is the stable coins can be created sort of out of thin air, but like in exchange for value. In other words, you could create a crypto chain. So people have done this that interacts with the blockchain, Ethereum or whatever, that has a stable coin on it. And then somebody could give you let's say Canadian dollars are 1.2 to 1. They give you $1.20 in Canadian, and you'll give them a U.S. stable coin that they'll have in their wallet. So you just created a stable coin, $1 US. The Federal Reserve was not involved in this whatsoever. That means that people can use the US dollar. The US dollar can be the currency that everybody uses, but it doesn't create a global demand for dollars that the Federal Reserve is in charge of easing or tightening. They don't have the ability to do this anymore. They could still do it too, the way it is, if they don't, but they could close that up. I'll talk more about what they might be going to do. It also means, so that's sort of the genius idea, is like formalize the stable coins. It doesn't like, and then other governments would have an incentive to tie their currency to the coins too. It's like everybody's going to be freaking using this. Part of why they'll use it instead of US dollars, a big part, is to save them a ton of money. So right now the whole West uses the SWIFT system in global trade, right? A lot of people are familiar with that. That has a 3% fee. Like when you use your credit card, they have a little credit card fee. It's a 3% fee. If you're buying $100 billion of oil, that's a lot of money. Crypto blockchain can process your. It doesn't cost more to do a large amount of money than it does to do a small amount of money. So, $100 billion exchange costs you almost nothing. Basically, zero fee. So that's going to be part of why everyone's going to want to get on this. And the other reason that they're going to want to get on this is, the reason that countries don't agree, like the reason that there's countries right now that are outside of the global trade system. Russia sort of have one foot in, one foot out, depending on what's going on. So you have pariah states or whatever. Part of it is because they want to do stuff that we don't want them to do, and then part of it is they don't want to be under our control. They don't want that limit on their sovereignty. So, like, Russia hates the way it's set up now. Like, there's the IMF and the World Trade Organization, and in the neoliberal world order, they use these things. They use all of this to pressure countries basically to be gay. Like, you can't be trad Muslim, you can't be trad Christian. You need to be a democracy. You can't be a dictatorship or a monarchy. You just have to be gay. And I thought, this is me speculating here, but knowing Trump, I think this is what he would do. And he seems very confident that he's going to get people like Putin. They're talking about a lasting peace and having a happy Russia and a happy United States and a happy rest of the world in this type of agreement. That's lasting peace. Why would you disrupt that? Everybody's making money. So what would make Russia happy? Well, they would be happy to not have the global economic system be wielded by by a liberal United States to twist their arm until they are gay. So how do they do that normally? Well, they do it with stuff like the IMF that loans the world money with all sorts of caveats. And they do the book called, Tales of an Economic Hitman? Stories of an Economic Hitman? Confessions. Guy talks about how he goes into countries and will bankrupt the country, so they have to take out a loan from the IMF. And then they have to change their country in order to fit. And this is like the CIA is involved in all sorts of stuff. That's not the type of vision that Trump has or Bessent or any of these guys. What they're trying to do is leverage this new tech. So, like, if and this is going to happen over time. Like, the skeptics are like, crypto's not ready. They're going to have an agreement and then to start doing some of this stuff, and then it will work better, and everything will just move to it. That's how I see it. But so, for example, you can, like, I realized yesterday, I've been looking at crypto all wrong. I've been looking at in terms of consumers, basically spending money, buying things. The whole we are just the test subjects for countries to use this stuff with billions and trillions of dollars, and loaning governments $1 trillion is going to be something that will be able to happen using crypto without a institution like the IMF. And by the way, I'm not a big crypto bro. Like, I really got sick of this stuff. I find them to be super annoying. I'm not super bullish on a lot of the, like, I do not imagine a decentralized crypto techno utopia. It ain't gonna happen. But when it can save billions of dollars every month or whatever for countries, they're gonna use this stuff. And when Russia sees a way forward of not the sort of weaponization of the thing they're agreeing to against them, then they'll agree to it. I don't feel like explaining that part very well. But another example is like the World Trade Organization. They set the rules for trade, and they can, you can put a bunch of small hats in there, and they will change the rules depending on their agendas and do all sorts of stuff. What you can do with the smart contracts once those come out or are being used for this is you could just have the rules baked into the cake. Like, you're going to buy this, and there's going to be a 10% tariff on it, and that tariff is going to process automatically. So in other words, it reduces the ideas. I'm beating this into a bush. it reduces the need for organizations that can then put, try to make you gay. So I see this as being extremely successful. As for the Federal Reserve, like I said, it's going to lose a lot of power because they're not going to be the only ones. Like for all these years, there's one spigot that creates money, and they have their thumb on the hose, and they can close it or they can open it. This is going to create many ways that U.S. dollars can be created besides them, and it could be that them in that weakened state, it will be fine. We could just let them sit there. It'll be sort of, be like, fine, whatever. It could be that it will become totally irrelevant. I can see value in having a government-led way to oversee some of this. Like, in other words, we're not talking about only stable coins existing or something. There's still American dollars issued by the American government. There's still cash in this. Although some people want to get rid of the cash, of course. Also using stable coins, it's a lot harder to do human trafficking and stuff in stable coins because you can see stable coins moving around. So maybe, I don't know, maybe my ideal with the Federal Reserve is that they would nationalize it. The government would run it. They would look into corruption over the last however many years and throw people in prison if they've been, which they have, I'm sure, taking advantage of it. But it's still a win if they have a lot less power. So that seems pretty awesome. Yeah, so that's my spiel on where we're headed with that. Let me drink some water and catch my breath. By the way, thank you guys for being here. I believe 7 concurrent. Oh, that's views. Like 2 concurrent views. Thought I had 7 people watching live. That's how many people popped in. Dang. Well, it's quality, not quantity, though. Although the quality could improve too, to be honest. I'm just kidding. I love you guys. All right, so I'm going to talk about Real ID, and then that'll be it for me for today. But yeah, thanks for hanging out for all of that, guys. Appreciate it. I mean, hopefully you got something out of it. Although I have a couple actually before we move on. There's a couple videos that helped me learn about this, but a lot of what I just told you, I got from research using AI and like asking questions so I can understand stuff. This guy did a good job. He's a liberal guy, and he ends up being thanks, really. He ends up being skeptical that Trump can pull it off, but I think he misses some things. But he did break down a lot of what I just said.
The plan is supposed to help reindustrialize the U.S. while at the same time to keep the U.S. dollar as the global.
Oh yeah, I didn't explain keeping how we can reindustrialize and keep it. I kind of did explain. I just didn't circle back to reindustrializing. Since U.S. with using stable coins, the whole world could get on the stable coin thing. We don't need to have deficits because they can use a stable coin instead of all of the money demand coming from America. So we can build up our industry and we can trade at surpluses, but they can still do we can still be the reserve currency. Now, I guess there's an interesting question of like, if a lot of it is stable coins and we didn't issue it, does that really count as us still being the reserve currency? But I feel like, it's like, well, not quite in the same way, but we would benefit tremendously in other ways, and we can have industry at the same time, which is really good. And the rest of the world wouldn't have to be so mad at us because we wouldn't be using. We'd benefit in different ways instead of the way of benefiting of like we can coerce governments into debt and make them gay. We could have other benefits that won't make people hate us as much. That's what it seems like to me.
Global reserve currency, because as Trump himself has said,
And if you want to go to third world status, lose your reserve currency. We have to have that. We cannot lose it.
so how do you keep your reserve currency status and reindustrialize at the same time?
Yeah, so this guy read all of the papers written by Trump's two advisors and watched everything that they said. He seemed to really do his homework. And that's how he came up with some of what I'm talking about.
Most economists think that this is simply not possible.
Yeah,
but
that's a good
Stephen
part.
Miran, he published a paper that says, yeah, this is actually possible. You can have your cake and eat it too. But to be clear, the paper that Miran has written is not a plan in itself. It is a cookbook with options. At the time of recording, Bessent also has not presented a full plan that includes his green, yellow, and red country structure. So, for the 3-step MAGA master plan that I am about to present you, I had to dive deep into what both Miran and Bessent have revealed so far. And no, sadly, I was not added to a US government signal group by accident. So for each step, I'll tell you exactly where I got my information from. Okay, here we go. Step 1, tariff chaos. This is the step that we are in now. In this step, the administration shows that it means business. It no longer cares about the stock market crashing. It no longer cares about the economy temporarily doing poorly. It just applies a lot of high tariffs to foes and friends alike to create negotiating leverage. I'm basing this on the fact that Bessent has said that while he didn't initially view tariffs as a negotiating tool, Mr. Trump...
He's added a third leg to the stool, and he uses it for negotiating.
My second piece of evidence to suggest the current chaos is temporary is that before being part of the administration, Miran said that the dollar policies that he proposed would likely be
pursued later in an administration after tariffs had produced the sufficient negotiating leverage.
So both Miran and Bessent are essentially telling us that the current tariff chaos is just about creating leverage that can be used when implementing the rest of the plan. Which brings us to step number 2, reciprocal tariffs. Remember this graph where China reacted to Trump's tariffs by ever increasing its own tariffs? If you really have reciprocal tariffs, that dynamic is theoretically gone. It will just be, look, you can keep going up, but we'll always match you, so there's always a level playing field. This is the long-term goal of the tariffs, or in Bessent's words,
This is what tariffs are designed to address. Leveling the playing field such that the international trading system begins to reward ingenuity, security, rule of law, and stability, not wage suppression, currency manipulation, intellectual property theft, non-tariff barriers, and draconian regulation.
But here economists have...
So it's like the kind of chaotic stuff is to get leverage. The ultimate goal is to still have tariffs, but to just have reciprocal tariffs. And my guess is that the end state will be an agreement. Everybody agrees across the board of reciprocal tariffs on everything. I don't know enough theory to really know like what that would do. You almost think, well, then everyone should just get rid of them. But no, because if there's always tariffs, then the more you export, the more money you make, which would kind of incentivize everyone to have an industrial base and export stuff. And every country would be trying to figure out, well, what are we good at? What could we do to share with the world? That sounds
often criticize the administration for wishful thinking because historically trade wars, such as those in the 1930s, just made everyone worse off and led to war. But here, Miran has said that
they've only got the United States to sell to. There's no alternative. So they're the ones who will bear the burden of these tariffs.
This is a really tricky point to understand, but what he essentially means is that due to everyone wanting to export to the US to obtain dollars, the US has a truly unique negotiating position in a trade war. Trump's first trade war failed because China just increased exporting to countries like Mexico and Vietnam, which then into the history books to rival the 1944 Bretton Woods Agreement or 1985 Plaza Accord, in which Japan and the US and European countries came together to collectively raise the values of the yen and European currencies versus the dollar. But how does that relate to Bessent's green, yellow, and red buckets? After joining the Trump administration, Miran has gotten much more quiet about this Mar-a-Lago Accord, which makes sense because he doesn't want to give away too much. But still, he did tell us that
if the dollar were able to weaken to equilibrate trade, then we wouldn't have a lot of the, to balance trade deficits, then we wouldn't have a lot of the problems that tariffs and other policies are designed to address, because U.S. exports would be more competitive on the global stage and we wouldn't be as cheated by other countries.
So I suspect that to avoid ruining the negotiations, they cannot talk about this as freely anymore as before, but that the ultimate goal is still to weaken the dollar while keeping it as a reserve currency. In his paper, Miran talked about some wacky options that the US could use to do this on its own, such as charging reserve currency users a user fee, but I think that they will not go for these options because it will be far too risky. Instead, I think the Mar-a-Lago Accord that the Trump team ultimately will push will look a lot like the Bretton Woods system, just minus the link to gold. I could even imagine that in this new world order, green countries peg their currencies to the dollar with a deal that whenever the dollar gets too strong, they appreciate their currencies against it. In return, they get access to the largest consumer market in the world, as well as
Yeah, so he's got some interesting ideas here. I'm not positive that it would need to devalue the dollar. Devaluing the dollar would make our stuff a lot more affordable for the rest of the world. So if we really want to be like an industrial superpower exporting, that might be good, and it might be fine for our dollar to be weaker overseas. You wouldn't be able to travel to Vietnam and live like a king as much, but I think you would still do just as well here, or you could in that scenario. However, I don't think that's necessarily, it's not necessary for sure.
This is how President Trump sees the world, not as a zero-sum game, but as interlinkages that can be reordered to advance the interest of the American people.
And this is why I think Trump's current economic chaos makes sense. The Trump team believes that the current international order is no longer in the best interest of the American people. They have already told us that the current tariff chaos is just a means to create negotiating leverage. They've already told us that they aim to use reciprocal tariffs to even the playing field for red and yellow countries, and they have hinted that if a currency deal can be made, tariffs can be much lower. And yeah, I do believe that if enough countries join the new MAGA world order as green countries that peg their currency to the US dollar, this does indeed mean that Trump can have his weaker dollar while maintaining its status as a reserve currency. This could help reindustrialize the US, at least to a certain extent in theory. But of course, all of this depends on the US making it attractive enough for countries to become a green country in the new MAGA international order. This, I believe, is the real problem with the plans of people like Bessent and Miran. They're clearly smart people, they have studied history extensively, but to voluntarily commit to raising your currency's value compared to the dollar, to continue to rely on US military protection, but now to pay for it, that essentially makes you a vassal state, subordinate to a great power. To submit yourself to the US in such a way, that requires an enormous amount of trust. Trust that the US had plenty of when countries signed the Bretton Woods Agreement.
Yeah, so I don't totally agree with him that he's right that military protection would be part of this. I don't think it would be like NATO where there's, you have to go to war for people type of stuff. but like, you know, kind of informal stuff like that. You know, there'd be other perks for being in the club, probably. But what I think he's missing is what I was talking about with the stablecoin stuff, where you actually would have more freedom, not less, than under the neoliberal world order. I feel confident that that's going to be part of the deal here. Because I don't think, I mean, people can love Trump all they want. They can have, you know, to the extent that they do, they can trust the Trump administration. But, you know, we could have whatever psycho, like they know we can have crazy liberals that will want to make them gay soon, probably. So, you know, unless, hopefully not, but you know what I mean. This guy, Mark Moss, also, this was very good. He's there. People are calling it the Mar-a-Lago Accord, so maybe that's what it'll be called. This is great. It's long, so I'm not going to play it.
This is 40 chess, and the Mar-a-Lago Accords are the real play. Now, yes, it starts with tariffs, then trade.
So just to read his notes behind him: erratic policy, markets crash, media attacks, Trump caves.
But it goes way deeper. We're talking about
that's what it looks like to people.
Financial warfare, and a full-scale reset of the world order. Now, if you miss this, you're going to miss the biggest geopolitical and financial shift of our lifetime to see the future. So there's a couple times...
Plaza Accord's the name of the other one. I forget what it's called. So he goes through the historical context. Talks about tariffs being surface level. Bringing manufacturing back being the second level. Third level is the global realignment and boxing China in. And then 40 is like, we're gonna create a whole new agreement and new system. So yeah, I thought this was really good. I'll throw it in the chat in case anybody wants it. And then yeah, just for a couple of minutes, I want to talk about the Real ID stuff. Here's Ron Paul losing his freaking mind. He gets more upset about stuff like this than he does about, like, I mean, that's what, you know, mass immigration. That's the, you know, I just don't know how you become that old and still be a libertarian. It's like, I like him. I have respect for him sticking to his guns, but like, this is not, it's not a serious way to think about the world.
Because this is one of a number of things that she's done that really kind of back up what you warned back when they created the department. It's going to be limiting our liberties, not anyone else's. We'll put on this first clip. This is from Newsmax, and they recognize. So Kristi Noem came out on Friday afternoon, and she said, "I got news for everyone. We are going to start enforcing Real ID. I think as of May."
This is not news. This has been, if you've ever gone to the airport for 20 years, you go to the airport and it says in 2025, you're going to have the Real ID to fly. Like or 15, it's literally been 20 years. This is not news at all. It was planned, like Bush, I think, set this up.
So Newsmax came out today. Real ID announcement receives wave of pushback on X, and which is good. And you go to the next one.
And it's an ID. I have in my phone a thing that can hear everything that I freaking say and upload it to AI that could, you know, and sell it to Palantir.
Here's what Noam did.
It annoys me because if we use Real ID, so the Real ID is like, it's a freaking ID, except for that before the Real ID, states all handled how they issue state IDs, your driver's license, by themselves. So, you know, Alaska can be like, you know, if you have a photo of yourself with a fish, then that's good enough. And then California could be like, you know, we need you to, we need to draw blood and read your DNA to do it or whatever. And Real ID, they just nationalized the standard. And as a bartender, it's kind of nice in the sense of like, I mean, I would, if it really affected liberty, I would be happy to have to figure out what a fake or a real ID of like all these different states was, which is practically impossible. But you know, they all can look different. Some of them are vertical, some of them are like fancy, some of them look like they're printed, in a high school dormitory, but are real. So it just standardizes it, and you have to have like your social security number and your birth certificate to get one. In other words, in order to get one of these IDs, you have to be a citizen. Now, we're also right now trying to pass, or I don't remember where in the process it is right now, but a federal rule that's the states. So states run elections, but so it's a little bit tenuous if the federal government can even do this. But it seems like under the auspices of national security, we need to make sure that non-citizens aren't voting in our elections. I mean, it's ridiculous, obviously, that we even have to have this conversation this stage of our country, but we do. And it's going to be freaking easy if we just say you need a real ID to vote. And if you're too stupid to get it, then sucks for you. Now, I don't understand.
They always do something they don't want to have any, people noticing it.
Like,
now it's a digital ID.
I haven't watched this. Is he going to say something where I'm like, oh no, I never thought about my liberties? Because I don't think he's going to.
Which requires a high-resolution digital facial image would be required to fly May 7th to fly. Starting May 7th, you will need a real ID to travel by air or to visit federal buildings in the U.S., she said in a video on X. These IDs keep our country safe because they help prevent fraud and they enhance security.
Yeah, they do.
She said that, a backlash ensued on X, including Dr. Paul by our great friend Thomas Massey. Go to the next one. Massey hit it right on the head. He called BS on Kristi Noem.
All right, let's read it. Real ID isn't needed and won't stop terrorists from hijacking planes. It has nothing to do with it. Most of the 11 hijackers had Saudi blah, blah, blah passports. It's a national standard and database of IDs. It's control for Americans. Okay, yes, you can have a Saudi passport and fly to the United States on a tourist visa and potentially hijack a plane. I mean, the hijackers are probably better pilots than some of the people that are flying them right now. It's a DEI joke. Like, I don't know. I mean, I like honestly for flying, I don't really care. But for voting,
he said, real ID isn't needed and it won't stop
use them for voting.
Egyptian or Lebanese passports. Real ID Americans. Bush. Now here's the kicker. You remember Sensenbrenner, the same author of the Patriot Act. You remember those times. Sensenbrenner was going nuts writing all these bills.
Yes, and they portrayed him as a...
Yeah, and they obviously didn't care that much about getting this one done because they said in 25 years or 20 years it'll come into effect. It was super important for the surveillance state that they created then they would have made sure that the IDs came out. Like, hello, what is this?
A great civil libertarian and working for our privacy. That's the most...
You love libertarians when the opposition party is in power and they're trying to do insane shit. And the libertarians are like, government doesn't have the right to do that. And you're like, yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? And then you get a government that wants to do things that actually help. And they're like, you can't do that. That's crazy.
The most insulting thing is what Donald Noem said. It was issued to make us safe.
Yeah.
They always turn it and twist it around, sort of like, we need the Federal Reserve so nobody ever counterfeits money.
We want the monopoly.
And this is what this is, monopoly over control. And I'm not very happy with the direction we're going right now. It looks like we're going to lose a lot more privacy if this bill gets reopened and made much worse, and it looks like it can do a lot more damage yet to come.
So it could get worse. So the ID isn't bad, but they could then ask, if they're going to ask for this much stuff, like, what do you need to do? What do you need to get a car loan, to get a bank account? I don't know, like.
Yeah, it's been sitting around. It passed in 05. It's just been sitting around.
It just seems perfect for, you need that to vote. Just nationwide, you need that to vote. You need to fly, you need to vote.
No one's done anything to it. No one has really enforced it. Now, all of a sudden, Christy Nolan wakes up and says, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and enforce.
This is the crazy thing, the all of a sudden thing. They're a lie. This is a lie. I've been going to the airport. I fly fairly frequently, well, less lately, but like I looked abroad and stuff. Every time I go to the airport, there was a sign for years. At this time, you're going to have to start needing this. The deadline was for this year. Maybe I'm missing something, but
you know, and so let's go to a little bit more from the Newsmax article. Now,
they're acting like this is
not coming from
Trump got in and is doing this outrageous thing. It's not outrageous, and he didn't do it.
Someone is carrying. Now, this is people.
As long as the pilot door locked and no one has weapons, why do you care if someone who flies has government permission? It's not getting government permission. It's like, I don't know, because I want, if you're on the lam from the law for multiple murders or something, like I would like you to get arrested when you try to get on the plane because you had to show your ID. If a person can't be trusted to fly without weapons, I don't know, man. I'm liking Massey less lately too. Like, libertarianism is stupid. It's not a database. It's proof that your physical person matches an entry in a digital database. So once everyone complies, then we'll see how bad it is. The internet, bro. Leading to more invasive biometric data. I mean, I guess, but like, yeah, I mean, the slippery slope thing I kind of get of like, okay, now we have, but it's just literally a national standard for how to make driver's licenses and state IDs. And then now you have to conform to the national standard. It's like the tiniest step ever. And like in terms of a database, like talk to Google about what they have. You know? Anyway, I don't know, like it's just like I want to protect the elections and that like and the border. And I would like law and order, and I would like when people commit crimes, the police to be able to understand who they are and who they're dealing with and then put them in jail, you know? And just, I don't know, given how invasive the internet is of my privacy and how much shit that they already know, private companies know about me, private companies run by people that hate me already, the fact that I have a standardized state ID, I just could care less. And they just seem like a joke to me. All right. Okay. All right. Well, that was fun. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Appreciate you guys being active in the chat also. I'll be back next week on Monday. Next time you see me, I will be baptized and confirmed and have my first communion and married in the church. I'll be in full communion in the Catholic Church, God willing. I'm super excited about it. So I'm going to come back. You're going to see me. I'm going to be glowing. It's going to be great. Come to think of it, my mom will be in town, so I probably won't have a show next week. I might do it later in the week after she goes out of town, but she's going to be sleeping in this room, so probably not. But anyway, I'll let you guys know. God bless you. True, how else can we prevent it if we don't know who they are? Like, this is a time when we need it. Yeah, for sure, exactly. Yes. Yeah, man. All right, love you guys. I'll see you.